Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WHAM, John Sneisen. And taxation is theft, and it is extortion. Well, both are one and the same. And I kind of wanted to use this story we're about to go into as an excuse to kind of go into how fraudulent this system is, how evil this system is, how it's not meant to help bring up the public and, bring money to the public and bring prosperity to the public and build the roads and blah, blah, blah. It's meant only to cripple people, push them into debt, enslavement. And of course, the IRS in the United States was, the IRS Act was passed around the same time as the Federal Reserve Act.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. And there's a reason for that because, of course, the amount of vast debt devaluation, inflation that comes from the Federal Reserve's debt-based system, and then the IRS coming in and collecting and extorting and stealing people's money. And the IRS has gone on for more than 100 years stealing from people. I think it probably has the role of the longest body of thievery in American history, other than the government, but the government uses the IRS to steal, so that plays into that anyway. So the story is, as Forbes magazine goes into, IRS loses $175 million class action lawsuit, and as the story goes into, I'll just quickly go into a bit of it. On September 8th, 2014, plaintiffs Adam Steele, Brittany Montroy, and a class of more than 700,000 similarly situated individuals and businesses filed a class action suit against the federal government seeking to recover allegedly unlawful license fees paid to the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. Nearly 3 years later, the plaintiffs got a win after Judge Royce C. Lamberth ruled that all fees that the defendant has charged to class members to issue and renew a PTIN are hereby declared unlawful. The potential cost to the IRS, $175 million. So, John, let's go into, just the evil destructiveness, the disgusting disgrace that is the IRS. Let's shoo the snakes out of the den. What do you think?
Well, I think this whole taxation model that's been around since, the early days of the kings and queens, how they, took their dues from what they claimed as their land where the peasants lived on. And I like to go back to my good old Swedish neighbors, and in the old days how they used to have a 40-pound, 20-pound copper currency. And that's actually how they innovated the first central bank in Europe, the Svenska Centralbanken. And what was interesting is it was because this massive, heavy currency was so hard to collect from the tax collectors. They got stuck everywhere with their horse and buggies. So they went to paper currency. And then, of course, the story goes from there that the guy that created the paper currency, he got hung. And then the government later adopted the same system.
Yeah,
so,
theft and devaluation go hand in hand, of course.
But this has been going on for decades, for centuries, for thousands of years, I believe. Some sort of form of taxation to benefit the wealthy here. And it all comes down to the deep state like IRS and other agencies that really benefits from being there. And I want to talk about the Canada Revenue Agency, because they're a for-profit agency and they are running and collecting taxes for profit, and it says that they are supposed to collect as much taxes as possible for the Canadian government.
Absolutely. I want to kind of stay on topic with the IRS, but yes, this is happening in every single country in the world for the most part, and it kind of goes back to the old Robin Hood story. A lot of people claim that Robin Hood was stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, but that's simply not the case. He gave to some of the rich as well. What he did was take the money that was stolen by the government back and gave it back to the people. Exactly. Yes, exactly. And this whole extortion racket, you kind of mentioned Canada for a second there, that, almost the majority of the taxes in Canada goes to paying off the interest on the debt. In the United States, there's a large system in place much like that as well. They print currency out of thin air, debt devaluation, inflation, it all works hand in hand. And then people are in debt servitude. And then people, are shoved down that bottomless hole of debt and are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system. That is servitude, folks, and that is the whole idea of this system in place in the first place. But what I think is interesting is so many people talk about, like we've gone into recently, the minimum wage. They look for basic income. They want the government to raise this income and everything, but the reason that income's even being raised in the first place is because of inflation, which it leads to anyways. It's a Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution. So I think it's really important to talk about how a large reason why businesses can't pay their employees, mostly like the small businesses can't pay their employees decent prices, is because they are being taxed to death. Of course, when you have government monopolies like these massive corporations that don't get that hurt from the regulations that are in place apparently to hurt them, and it's actually the small businesses that are hurt by these regulations, then you have these taxes as well that don't really hurt the big corporations but hurt the small corporations, but once again they're in place to apparently stop those big monopolies. It's just that Hegelian perpetual nature going in a circle forever. And this is why so many people are in poverty. That's why the middle class is being wiped out. It's the monetary system and the markets and this extortion and greed of the government. People say they have to pay their fair share. Well, who dictates what fair is? Think about it. How is it fair? How is it the opposite of greed to steal people's money because you think you know how it's best spent? And then you basically just monopolize the markets, you monopolize major corporations and shove the small ones under the rug. It's just infuriating to watch this Hegelian nature repeat over and over and over again. When are people going to learn taxation is theft? Everything the government does, the free market can do better. There's always voluntary caches in free market societies and voluntary societies where people can put into voluntarily by their own free will. And it will go a much longer way because prices aren't overly inflated, and there's actual competition and innovation in the market, more money going into people's wallets and more value of that money, and there's more. It's so much better, but it drives me crazy that people think all these problems are caused by the government and corporations via the hand of the government. So let's just bring in more government. It's absurd.
Well, just one example here from Manitoba, actually.
Canada,
in Canada, where we live. Steinbach is a little town where there's lots of Mennonites living, and it's kind of a German-ish town, I would say, definitely. What's interesting about them, what they did is their main drag down there, to get into the city, they had that all redone, and what they did is actually the corporations that lived along that stretch, they came together and created a good road, and not having the government, like here in Winnipeg, for example, where it's pothole mania, driving around. And I've driven down in Steinbach, I actually seen the result. Like, this road has been there for I think for over a decade for sure, and you don't see any potholes. Here you see potholes quite fast.
Well, the private industry is more efficient because they have to deal with demand rather than a lot of these private companies go through contract with the government, and then they want their contracts back, and there isn't any demand of the individual mixed into it. It's just, well, we know the sooner we get paid to do this again, the more money we will make.
They got the service contract to repeatedly go out and repair their bad job in the first place.
Absolutely. So they have no incentive to actually do a good job, and that's why the roads fall apart. People always say, my roads, who'll build my roads? And I say, I'll build the fucking roads, folks. We as individuals will build the fucking roads. It's not like this is some great, vast innovation that's almost impossible to actually
roads
make.
are very simple, actually.
I know, I used to lay roads. I used to be a concrete labor worker, and trust me, it's not that difficult, folks. And outside of the contracts with the government, we'd probably do a much better job at it. And I think that is clear.
They're forced to do a great job.
Exactly. I mean,
and then if you don't do a great job, well, here comes the next guy to actually do a better job.
Absolutely,
The free market chooses who can do it. Not the government gives a contract for 10 years to somebody. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Instead of under the contract of the government, they build the roads. And when they build the roads, they don't do a good job. So but they don't have to worry because they come back and redo the roads a few years later and make more money. But in the free market, they do a really good job on the road. They spend a little bit extra effort and time and money on making sure that road is good and quality. And then later on, they get another contract, so it doesn't hurt that they spent a little bit extra money and then got their profit, because they get more profit later on when they do the roads again, like 15 years down the line. It's an investment. But I think pondering a bit much on the roads.
Yeah.
But
Well, let's just go into a business perspective. Think about this. Think about you as a business. You want to actually provide and do a great service to people, because then they will remember you and they want to come back to you. It's very simple. The government doesn't care whatsoever about that. And I dealt with like being an immigrant here in Canada. It was quite interesting to deal with several agencies and customer service.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculously bad. And that's what it's all about. The government love to tax you, and they just don't care about whatsoever to provide you with something, because it was theft in the first place. So they didn't have to worry about that money. It comes out of your pocket no matter what happens.
Yeah, we can't help but kind of keep drifting off topic into Canada, because I think the reason for that is because we're so heavily extorted here, and I think a lot of people in the United States would be shocked. Yeah. But no extortion is good. Individuals' demand counts much better than any so-called democracy where the government is being voted in and 51% speak for the 49. It's just nonsense. It comes down to the free market, the individual, and that's how you get the most quality, the lowest prices, the best innovation, best. We continue to compete, and one business does something stupid and they lose their demand, and people go to the other one who will provide better service, better quality,
and then
better
the
product.
One might better themselves or go bankrupt.
Absolutely, and that's how you come up with cures for diseases, instead of like two big pharmaceutical companies that work hand in hand, monopolized by the state and through extortion or taxation. It's the same thing.
Let's go quickly, just before we're going to end this, let's go back to the States and talk a little bit more about the type of shadow government, because IRS is very much a shadow government. They're always there. They don't get voted in, whoever sits at the IRS most of the time. But there's so many more agencies. It's ridiculous in the United States. And what's interesting to me is there's so many of these, like BLM, the IRS, CIA, FBI. Well, what's interesting, there's a whole massive amounts of these agencies, and what I looked at is all these agencies, even the school boards, have their own SWAT team.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane? We haven't gotten that far here in Canada. I don't know about the CRA if they actually have a hit force. But sure it's intimidation. These agencies have taken on a form of themselves, and they're in full control. They don't care about who's in power, if it's Obama or if it's Trump. They are in control because they are running the show. They don't get elected in, and they're always there. People, might have stayed there for 20, 30, 40 years, like in a government job, and they lobby and they create their own control mechanisms.
Yeah, they're laughing at us as they're sitting there going, they're all complaining about Trump, or they're all complaining about Obama. He's just our puppet. He has nothing to do with anything that we're actually doing. We are the ones that are making these rules. We are the ones that are extorting. We are the ones that are keeping this extortion racket going on and on and on, because we can't, lower the amount of control we have over the public, because that would go against our agenda. That would go against our end goal of absolute debt enslavement and complete servitude, because they love servitude, folks, and as long as they keep that going, they're happy, and they build it so that it continues to go in a circle forever, and each time getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And I can't help but mention, like back in Britain in the 1960s, of the one for you, 19 for me, and the 95% tax that people had to deal with.
France today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's really important.
It's a cycle. It's a whole taxation cycle, we like to call it, where you go from the low, like small government, low taxation, to the big government, 100% taxation, basically.
But the small begets a big, because eventually it grows. It always does.
Yeah. It's a cycle, right? Like any government wants to be small. Like as it collapses, it gets small, then it goes back in, because we had the same government there, and the government just slowly increments.
It's kind of like a sponge in water, but instead of water, it's money. They get small, but as that money flows in, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they're just about to explode.
Yeah, and with that also the inflation gets bigger and bigger. It's the same. It's like that. So And what happens is when the governments, have to get paid all this money, all these shadow government activities that they're doing, the military industrial, whatever it is, they're gonna have to get paid, and they are not getting anything of value created when they get paid. How they get paid is by extorting us for the private sector's money and then taking that and giving it to themselves.
It's a rather simple concept, but a lot of people just refuse to look at it and think that it's better to just, virtue signal and say things that sound good. Free stuff, we need free stuff. No, that actually perpetuates the very problem that you claim that you want to stop. And it's theft and it's slavery and it's wrong. And there's no moral argument for stealing people's money in order to make the almighty government even more powerful and able to extort you more. It's ridiculous. And poverty doesn't come from lack of taxation. Poverty comes from taxation and inflation, central planning, just the control complex as it stands. So people have to start understanding this, or we'll just never win. We'll always be going in circles forever. We need absolute freedom, folks, and that is the bottom line for this video. So thanks, John, for going into this. Check the links below, folks. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so insanely censored and demonetized by YouTube. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check our link to the Red Pill Expo taking place June 23rd to 24th in Bozeman, Montana, where you could see people like Robert Kiyosaki, G. Edward Griffin, Lord Monckton, James Corbett, Richard Gage, Jeff Berwick, Cynthia McKinney, John Rappaport, Mike Adams, Ty Bollinger, and the list goes on and on and on. You're going to want to be there and check this out, and we hope to see you there. But until next time,
Time is running out.
This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.